Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Zadar and Zagreb. This is Sarajevo calling. Unfortunately, we are not in Zadar on a sunny day, but we are having this online conference, and we are very happy to join you. I'm here today with my colleague Lejla Hajdarpašić, professor at Faculty of Philosophy of University of Sarajevo, who will share this session with me. We will try to address some issues on research integrity of the collections from one rarely examined view, the librarians, archivists, and curators' view on what is the impact of storing and caring for sensitive collections and the data stored in them. So basically, our idea during this session is to examine how the results of qualitative research stored in libraries and archives can really impact our lives as a professionals and as a human beings. The thing is that rarely, the vast majority of collections are open to public, and they are collections of the printed material, printed in numerous copies, and we are providing them to our users. But we are barely discussing how to treat unique collections, basically the empirical data sets, which have been the basis for writing the scientific papers that our colleagues that are working at university with us are producing in order to write their research papers, PhD thesis, and master thesis. The bulk in practice mostly is to store those data on personal computers of the researchers, and those empirical data sets are barely going out of the public because of the habit that keeping the data for ourselves is something that we have been used to. But with the CESDA initiatives, with the open data archives, this thing is becoming much more open, and the sharing the data and enabling the second generation of researchers to reinterpret the data is something that we are very proud of. The most of the collections which are available to our users within the CESDA initiative, within the social science data archives, are the quantitative data sets which cannot make harm. Generally speaking, they cannot make such harm, or they cannot threat persons individually. But what happened when we start to deal with the collections, which can include the war testimonies on the surviving the war, war rape, personal diaries, or anything which can really deeply impact the individuals on deeply psychological and personal level, if this data is disclosed to wider public without acceptance of informed consent of the participant who participated in the research. So today we will speak about those issues, and as a first speaker is Professor Lejla Hajdarpašić, my honorable and esteemed colleague from the Faculty of Philosophy, who will give us some thoughts, food for thought actually, about sensitive empirical research data sets. Lejla, floor is yours.
Thank you, Saša. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me. So, as Saša explained, Sarajevo session is about research collections and sensitive data. And in my presentation, which is some form of introductory presentation, I will discuss some challenges regarding sensitive empirical research data sets, and we'll discuss Bosnian and Herzegovinian context in this regard by addressing the role of information professionals in raising awareness about open science in general. So the benefits of open research data that, according to Horizon guidelines, include statistics, results of experiments, measurements, observations resulting from field work, etc., are well discussed in contemporary literature, followed by Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Knowledge that, apart from free access to scientific publications, also relates to free access to data and metadata. Free access, sharing, reusability, visibility of research as benefits of open research data have led to creation of different national policies that relate to open science. Some funding agencies also require the reuse of data. So this led to creation of many national, international, disciplinary institutional repositories. RE3 data, and the statistic is from this Sunday, contains information about 2,563 repositories so far. So this is very encouraging information. However, in making many issues might occur, and this process might not be successful. OpenAIRE defines sensitive data as data that must be protected against unwanted disclosure. Access to sensitive data should be safeguarded, and further protection of sensitive data might be required for legal or ethical reasons. This data includes personal data, such as identification number, then confidential data like passwords, financial informations, combination of different data sets that refer to data sets that can be combined into sensitive or personal data, biological data, and finally personal and sensitive metadata as well. When dealing with sensitive research data, many ethical and legal questions might appear, and this session is all about that. As well, questions about long-term preservation and long-term protection of data and metadata, findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reuse of data might be challenging. Is it enough to provide access to metadata? Maybe we can discuss this later. So sensitive research data pose many different challenges across disciplines in social sciences and humanities as well. Social sciences and humanities are mainly about quantitative and qualitative data that, as Saša explained, might contain sensitive personal and confidential elements in form of, for example, interviews with war victims, etc. And furthermore, both data, personal data might have direct and indirect identifiers that make this situation even more complicated in terms of access control, which might discourage researchers to provide open research data. But of course, there are some possibilities of making sensitive research data open. Usual methods include anonymization, pseudonymization, encryption, and other methods. In each scenario, researchers need to balance the modification process. Otherwise, data might be not reusable or not protected enough. So this requires a very clear research planning, and there are already tools available for data management, but as well as training in social sciences. Sensitive research data, both qualitative and quantitative data, and their protection. In this regard, it's very encouraging that within the RDA from January 2019, the interest group, and I believe that this group might be a perfect place to discuss all these matters. Saša, I see that you stopped my video.
I'm sorry, I stopped the video because it seems that your connection is poor, so you can just continue without video, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just saw that you, okay.
Yeah.
So I think I said something about RDA, I guess. Yes. So now I would like to address the role of information professionals in this context. And I would like to discuss this in terms of Bosnian and Herzegovinian context. According to the report on the implementation of Commission's recommendations on access to and preservation of scientific information in Europe from May 2018, that had a special annex for Western Balkan countries, Albania, Montenegro, Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, this report stated that these countries are making some progress in terms of open access to preservation of scientific information, but I quote, "No initiatives on national clouds are reported," end of quote. Furthermore, when it comes to open access to research data in Bosnia, I quote, "There is no relevant policy or discussion taking place at national level," end of quote. So regarding the directions for the future, as we could expect, for Bosnia and Herzegovina, report stated that, I quote, "Soft policies are a more realistic initial approach, coupled with awareness raising about the benefits of open access to scientific publication and data." I believe that this conclusion might be a strong message to library community, especially academic library community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Within the RDA, the Libraries for Research Data Interest Group already created 23 things that recognize the role and possible contributions of information professionals in research data sharing. And these 23 things refer to data literacy, data management plans, metadata, digital preservation, etc. But primary librarians have always been promoters of free access to recorded knowledge. The most respectable program within the library international community, the program of Universal Bibliographic Control and National Bibliographic Control, is not only about description of the recorded knowledge, but rather about access to recorded knowledge in respectable countries by means of a legal deposit. So the Bosnian Herzegovinian context, the current situation regarding both open access to scientific publication and open research data might be recognized as unique challenge and opportunity for librarians to promote these concepts and give their contribution in creating policies with other relevant bodies, of course, in research data management, providing data services, especially when it comes to sensitive research collections and sensitive data. So basically, these are some questions that we want to address in our session, and I am looking forward to discuss them with you. Saša?
Thank you very much, Lejla. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I think it's okay.
I can hear you, but I cannot see you. So
I believe now. Is it okay now?
Saša, everything's fine with your connection.
Yeah? Fine. Okay. Yeah. I will continue. Thank you very much, Lejla, for this. Somehow, for me, the key concern or the key sentence that is always triggering my all thinkings when I'm speaking with Lejla, who is a bibliographer, it's this point when universal bibliographic control come to question. It's not only a description; it's access also to the recorded knowledge, and then the problems occur in terms of accessibility. The thing is that library community is I mean, at least I have been practicing librarian for a couple of decades, and I have been visiting frequently the conferences and conventions of the librarians, and half of the papers are always how we are proud of our collections and listing what we have in the collections, and other part of the papers are heavily relying on what we do in terms of techniques and how we are, or what kind of technologies we are using. We are barely discussing the things why we are doing this stuff and how we are doing this stuff. And then when it comes to the sensitive data, or especially when it comes to the access to the research, then things can become really, really complicated. The trigger for my own is a famous Boston College tapes that I would like for you to little bit do the research on the web on it. Basically, it's a Belfast project called Belfast Project, whose aim was immediately after the signing the peace treaties in Northern Ireland. Basically, they start to collect personal testimonies of the persons who have been members of the IRA and who have been involved in the troubles, or basically what were their recollections, personal memories and recollections during the 30 years conflict, and what was their participation both in Sinn Féin and IRA. So basically, and then the research institution who was contracted gave the interviewees guarantees that their depositions or their interviews and personal memories and collections will be released to the public for research purposes after their deaths or 50 years period of term. Fortunately or unfortunately, it depends from which side we are looking, the police of Northern Ireland realized that in those depositions there are many facts that have been given by the interviewees about the murders, about the car bombs and the stuff, or the crimes committed. So, and then they start the court battle to get the research data handed over by the Boston College, who have been running the project, to them. And then finally they start really huge international court battle to give them the data. And after so many years of battle, the police succeeded, and some of the interviews have been handed over to a police, and then the court trials and prosecutions started. This somehow triggered me to think about our collections, which we have been curating in the Balkans. A lot of our researchers have been dealing with the wartime atrocities and with the wartime in general, interviewing the war survivors and interviewing the war victims about their experiences during the war. So those testimonies have been used to write research papers, PhD theses, or whatsoever, and those data remain. What is the destiny of those data if we, as a research institution, said that they will give anonymity 50 years after their death? But what happened if the participants in the research during their interviews describe the war crimes that they have been present to, or if they know the perpetrators of the war crimes and if they have seen them and give those facts and circumstances during the interview? The librarians, researchers, curators, and archivists are not protected by law like the lawyers, doctors, and priests are, so we don't have privilege of silence. Based on our first account with the war crimes, we have to report them to the police or to the nearest prosecutor office. But we have given to our participants in the research guarantees that those data will not be released 50 years after their death, or whatever agreement we have made with them. So what to do in those cases? This is just food for thought and start to think about this. The second issue is that both Croatia, both Bosnia, and also Serbia, after the war, had a biblical flood of researchers from foreign universities doing the qualitative research on the field, interviewing the persons in the villages, in the urban, rural areas, trying to recollect as much as anthropological research, psychological research, whatever has been done. And unfortunately, we do not have full control is what's happened with those data. We have to take care not only about the data, but about the individuals and human beings. The basic policy that we have to is do not harm. How we can think about those data which are not in our possession, not in our control even, done by a researcher from the United States of America, from Germany, from Netherlands, from Japan, from Korea, from Egypt, from Morocco, from whoever they are, and they have deposited those data within their research archives or not, but whether they are properly anonymized, as Lejla suggested, whether they are anonymized or not. So maybe, can you imagine that some war victim who have given an interview in confidentiality find her or his interview in some of the public repositories abroad, not in Bosnia, not in Croatia, not in the Balkans. How we can influence the policies of those who are keeping the data about our nationals, or how to protect our inhabitants as well. How much attention we are paying to this. This is one of the central and core collections that are my core concerns that I would like to elaborate. The thing is that most of qualitative research, fortunately or unfortunately, is dealing with the customer experience in the shopping malls or the primary healthcare. So basically, some of those data cannot victimize the person or cannot stigmatize it. In one of the latest research published like 2 years ago, there have been research on qualitative data. So some of the participants in some of the research, 200 of them have been recontacted and asked whether they have anything against that their data are shared or their testimonies are shared. That 98% of them said no, because this is for advancement of science. This is Finland. But if you see the National Human Development Report, for instance, for Bosnia, index trust in Bosnia is 10%. We are not believing even to our family members. To whom we are talking, what kind of socially desirable answers we are giving. So those are all the concerns that we have to think. So what is the destiny of the data that is already collected and stored somewhere else? My question can be also to Lejla, what kind of bibliographic control can we do with this? So basically all of those are published papers. But from the collection point of view, is an empirical data set integral part of the research paper that has been published? Is it or it is not? So that's something that I would like to think of. So how to treat empirical data sets that are associated with a published item which has some sort of national bibliographic control. So can we also think about research data that is associated with this? This is also my question, because it's not only about description, it's also about nexus. So basically our thing here in library community is not only like we have been taught in our library colleges, it's not only to collect, organize and disseminate, but it's also to interpret the data. So what is the destiny of data? This is my first concern. I don't have a definite answer. So what is my proposal is both for Bosnia and Croatia is to do the mapping research project on identifying empirical data sets that have been a basis for writing an articles about war trauma, survivors' psychological studies, anthropological and or historical studies, to map this research and to try to find out what's happening with the data, and also to enable our researchers second generation of reading, because a reinterpretation of those data is of crucial and utmost importance, because the objectivity and neutrality, as we all know, does not exist. We are all biased. We have to admit ourselves that we are biased, that we have prejudices and stereotypes in our heads. So basically, we cannot be neutral and objective librarians from 9 to 5, leaving our emotions, desires, and fears at 9 o'clock before entering in the library or archives and taking it back at 5 o'clock when we are exiting out. So we really have to really rethink about those positions. So basically, mapping the research data is of crucial importance. And secondly, the protecting of those data, and also to think the ethical considerations. What is the destiny of this data? Because they are containing very, very sensitive information that nobody wants to leak outside the research archives without the consent of the participants who have been involved in the research. I do not have any definite answers, and we are barely talking about this. So this is my and Lejla's intention to start this discussion, because when you go through all manuals in qualitative research and all the research methods, it's always given in such neutral way, saying that you have to take care about the safety, you have to take care about anonymity, but actually nobody was trained actually how to do that. I will just give you one brief example. When participant can become a researcher, There was one study on domestic violence, and the most users of that study in the library were women who have been later on identified as a participants in the survey. And they would like to see how they have been treated by the researcher in the written article that has been followed by the research process after the collecting of interviews. That's also a very interesting study to see how the participants can behave as researchers, and also what's happening when the researcher has a bias and wrongly identify the codes, or we allow the leaking of the information from our collections. So those are my basic issues and considerations that I would like to share with you. Of course, we can speak about this for an hour, but my point is how to rethink the open access policy regarding to this very, very sensitive issues. It's not only about the publishing things, but also about caring about what was published and what was the sources for the things that is published. Thank you very much. Alene?
Yes, sorry.
I'm done. Thank you very much. This is my contribution. So,
Okay.
and I would like to invite our guests to join us in the discussion if they have any questions, thoughts that they would like to share with us.
Okay, maybe.
Or if not, Alan can also put some.
No. We had some questions.
Okay.
Lejla, there were some questions for you. Could you answer them?
Yes, I just briefly said thank you for your question because I was waiting for Saša to finish his presentation. So Eva Grabarić-Andonovski asked, what is the main role of the libraries in the future? How can libraries have a leading role in the open science development and support? Later, Eva commented additionally that somehow libraries are not considered important stakeholder in discussion on open science agenda. They're only mentioned when discussion is about transformative agreements. I agree, Eva, and thank you for your question. I agree, but when talking about a situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think that this is a unique opportunity for librarians to promote, to raise awareness about open science and to be important part of those processes of creating policies. They just have to promote all the skills they have in organizing, storing, and disseminating recorded knowledge, and just, be one major part of all that open science concept. So I think a better promotion maybe is required, and if they start to raise awareness about this, I am sure that they will be, contacted to help create different policies, which we lack in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Saša, do you want to comment?
Well, actually, my general question about open science is that also I'd love to raise the term that my esteemed colleague Beata Klotz from the Central and Eastern European Online Library said when she had very turbulent discussion with Mario Hibert, because Mario is very big fan of the open access and open science. And then Bea tell him, Mario, this is not open content. The proper term should be content paid by others. And actually, who is paying for the content of open science? So basically, this is also related not about only to openness of it, but also about the structure of the funding to the open science. This is something that the librarians can also give their hand to help to understand how the open science works, actually.
I'm sorry, Saša.
Yeah.
One question from me. We had a great cooperation during our social science data archives era, yeah. But I lost the track about the situation in Bosnia. What about this creation of data archive or data archives? And is there some kind of central data archive in perspective, or the institutions are struggling by themselves with these issues?
Actually, there are a couple of initiatives. Unfortunately, due to administrative structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is heavily decentralized country, and we have 16 authorities dealing with research and higher education. So we do not have like Ministry of Science, like Croatia has the one, and who can actually give a policy and then try to move this policy forward. On the state level, we have Ministry of Civil Affairs, which only have a Department for Science and Higher Education, and they are willing to support initiatives. And actually, currently, as I know, there is one trust who would like to continue on the fundamentals of Srcida that we have given. So there is a huge interest in this. But unfortunately, the thing about the participation of the public higher education institutions is currently under consideration because we have 8 public universities in different cantons, and every canton has its own law on higher education and the separate law on research, which heavily complicates things about the sharing the data or consortial approach. So this is the legal issues are much more questioned than the funding, I would say. So because if we do the auto-archiving thing, as we have discussed in numerous ways, this should not be an extremely expensive project. It can be associated with the university library, and it can be done. But currently, we are talking about the legal elements in Bosnia.
And
this situation, yeah.
Yeah, and you said about the huge amounts of qualitative research data. Is these data are somewhere stored, or which institutions does have access to it, or does?
Well, basically, the thing is with the qualitative research, it's still on the laptops of their creators.
Yeah, I thought so.
So basically, what we done is a brief mapping of what was published, and based on that, we know who are the owners of the data. But because of the policy or lacking the policy on curating and storing the data and guaranteeing the continuity and the protection of the data, so basically this is a huge and heavy issue. And you will recall when we have been together in United Kingdom Data Archive, the qualitative data archivist said to me that yes, they have some qualitative data, but the sensitive ones no, because nobody knows how to cure them. So they love the customer surveys data, they love primary healthcare data, they love travel agencies surveys, but when it comes to Northern Ireland, that I have asked her, she remained silent. Well, maybe archive in Belfast is doing something. So it's always, so it's very, very heavily sometimes a political issue as well, how to deal with this data. And yeah, so this is very, very complicated. It's not only based on technology or that you are, I mean, I know that you are expert in the technology, so basically these conversions from one format to another and keeping the continuity for the future. I'm not speaking about what is the destiny stored on the 525-inch floppy disk, but what is really the destiny of the data which is stored outside of our countries and also inside, which are still in possession of the researchers, or maybe they are deposited with the faculty library, but improperly kept, or not anonymized. So this is then you can really make a problem to the persons who have been participating in research under the agenda of openness. The openness is fine, but it also has to be a limit for openness.
Yeah.
Question.
Okay, so you have a table with the names and laptops, laptop computers with data. Yeah. Thanks for this. And Irena from ADP has a question for both. Can I just say the question?
Yeah.
So what kind of trainings would librarians need? What kind of skills would librarians need to feel comfortable supporting researchers, in your opinion, of course?
Another degree. No, this is the thing is that librarians are already trained in technology and techniques. So this is not a problem. The storing the data is not much differing of storing any kind of other formats that we are dealing from the library Biblioteca Alexandrina till today. Only formats and technologies are changing. Our mission is the same. But the thing is that I strongly believe is the librarians, archivists, and curators need some anthropology and psychology training, not in terms of basics of anthropology and research methods, which has been done on the field, but the awareness about that the data that we are curating can affect somebody else's lives. This is not Dervish under Thoughts or Dervish under Death by Mesha Selimovic, the book, which you can give to the person, but the data that we are giving to somebody can make harm to the person who are participants. So awareness raising is one issue, and also the collaboration of researchers with the librarians during the process of research can also be an eye-opening process to the librarians to understand how the data are collected and how they should be treated. So basically, awareness raising and also the empathy is a value, and also the learning about the values, the freedom, solidarity, and equality, and human rights. Basically, this is an issue for librarians. If we understand those principles, which leads to the most important principle for me personally is do not harm. This is something that librarians should be aware of. I will just give you a small example, if you allow me, Alan. When librarians say no to the client in terms of answer to the question, one no can have 5 different meanings. One is it's not in the collection. One, it's outside or it's checked out. It's on the reading outside of the library. I don't want to give it to you because I don't trust you. I believe this item is not for you, and I don't want to buy it because it's not is along with my personal beliefs. So one no can have 5 different meanings, and the poor user is only having a no and say thank you, and he will come 15 days again. But only we know what we mean under the no. And this kind of having a dialogue about this, this is an important issue for us as well.
Okay, thank you. Let me see.
Another question for Saša.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you, Lejla, has something to add to Irena, or?
No, I think I would just repeat whatever Saša just said, because I agree that raising awareness is the first most important step in this process. So Eva had a question for you, Saša. I'm not sure if you
saw it. Yeah, I saw it. For me, the best thing to start are the events like this, and thank you very much to PubMet and to Jadranka and Stranovski and Alan to allow us to open this topic during the PubMet2020. The public forums are the best place to start. If we write heavily complicated academic article about sensitive data in librarians, nobody will read it, or maybe somebody will, or Lejla will because she's a bibliographer. I will read it only if it's on cover page. So the public forums are one thing to go. The second is really to start to talk to the researchers about to having a coffee with them, not actually to attend their conferences immediately, but to start to talk with the researchers and really have a couple of coffees with them, or something stronger if you prefer, and have a couple of hours of discussion about those issues, and also to linking to the activist groups, because we have to learn how to advocate. It's not only to advocate to the state level and make a national policy or put it in the law. The awareness of the research community and their cooperation with librarians and archivists about the essentiality of this, it is important. And we have to learn from the activist groups how the networks are formed, how we can make a change, and how we can speak in the plain language that everybody can understand what we are talking, and not to speak with the hermeneutic closed language that can be understood only by the professionals in the community. We have to open ourselves. because we really have to start a dialogue in the community. So to sum up, the first step are the public forums like this one. Secondly is talking to the researchers and also advising other librarians, archivists, and curators to do so. And also to link with activist groups and to learn how to form alliances and how to change things non-violently. This is basically what is the most prominent thing that I will advise.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Saša. Yeah, we're very sorry that Mario Hibert couldn't participate. So yeah. So do you have something more, or?
I would just like to say, may the force be with you. This is it.
Yeah. Lejla?
I'm so sorry. My connection is for some reason very poor, so I just hear.
Yeah. Okay. I asked, do you have something to add?
I'd just like to finish with my favorite dialogue part from the Star Wars. Is when Obi-Wan Kenobi came to the Federation archive and trying to find the map of one solar system. And then the librarian answered, "My dear Jedi, if it is not in archive, it does not exist."
Well.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So we're done with this session. I would like to call all participants to stay. We have some sponsors videos, and later there is a sponsor session, session 9. So please stay tuned. We have some news from our sponsors. Okay, Saša, Lejla.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, see you.
Thank you very much.
I hope we'll see you live soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye.
Bye.